Hey friends! Many people have probably had nightmares about being buried alive or waking up in a confined space, and then your air runs out. And there's nothing you can do. Just thinking about it is enough to give you goosebumps, isn't it? In the past, live burials were used as a method of execution. But sometimes it can actually happen by mistake when a person is in a catatonic state or coma. We have some stories about that today, but don't worry, they all have happy endings. Let's go! The cardboard box. For many years, a young man named Marcin and his girlfriend Michalina lived in perfect harmony, but then their relationship quickly began to fall apart. This was perhaps due to the fact that Marcin Kasprak was obsessed with weightlifting, and to increase his strength, began actively using steroids, which made him increasingly unstable and angry. One day, after another argument with Michalina, the young man sneaked up to the girl at home and shot her with a taser. He then tied her up and put her in a cardboard box. For a homemade grave, he dug a shallow hole and covered it with branches and a 40-kilogram log. After regaining consciousness, Michalina had no idea where she was or why it was so dark. She had a panic attack and couldn't breathe. But suddenly she remembered that she had an engagement ring on her hand. Using it to cut the boxes, after an hour, the woman somehow managed to get out of the ground. Dirty and exhausted, she ran to the nearest highway and asked for help. After a long trial, the court sentenced Marcin to 20 years in prison. During her testimony, Michalina admitted that the incident shocked her so much that she still has nightmares about being buried alive, but fortunately, it all ended well for her. Resurrection. This strange incident occurred in one of the provinces of Argentina. A woman named Analia Buter gave birth to a baby girl while under anesthesia, but as soon as she regained consciousness, the doctors told her that the baby had passed away and the body of the newborn was already in the morgue. The decision to say goodbye to their daughter was not easy for Analia Buter and her husband. But after regaining their composure, the couple decided that they still needed to say goodbye to their daughter, whom they had never seen. Morgue employees brought them to a small coffin with the lid still closed. As Analia later recalled, "I thought my heart was going to break when we opened it. Taking a deep breath, I slowly lifted the lid. First I saw the little hand, and then the face of my baby. Unable to contain the emotions that overwhelmed me, I burst into tears, and suddenly I heard my baby girl let out a faint cry." The woman jumped away from the coffin in horror, thinking she had imagined the sound. Then her husband, Fabian, approached the child and saw that their newborn daughter was slowly opening her eyes. The man figured that his daughter must have just been sleeping peacefully the whole time. Just imagine, the small child had spent about 12 hours in a cold morgue because of the negligence of doctors. Fortunately, everything worked out. Initially, the parents were going to name their baby Liliana Abigail, but they instead chose the name Luz Milagros, which means marvelous light in Spanish. It didn't work. Houdini was the first person in the world to attempt the most dangerous stunt known as buried alive, back in 1915. He did not succeed. Once buried alive, he had a panic attack when he realized that he couldn't get out. He was taken out of the grave, unconscious, by assistants. The second attempt at this stunt took place in 1949. A 22-year-old magician from Manchester wanted to perform it, but he suffered the same fate: panic and loss of consciousness. And then, decades later, another daredevil decided to take the risk. Antonio Breton of West Yorkshire decided to demonstrate to the public at a charity event his ability to get out of a grave in the ground. He was also tied up and handcuffed. For several minutes, the enchanted audience waited for the man to emerge successful from his stunt. But after almost 9 minutes, it became clear that the magician was not coming up from the grave, which meant that he needed to be rescued immediately. Fortunately for the magician, rescuers with special equipment were standing by. They quickly removed him from the grave unconscious. As it turned out, he couldn't open the wooden coffin lid, breaking 2 ribs and scratching his hands in the effort to do so. To date, every illusionist in the world recognizes this trick as the most dangerous. Others are discouraged from attempting it. Without the presence of rescuers and excavating equipment, a person runs the risk of dying underground. Dog. Now let's take a break from the unfortunate magicians and go to France. It's hard to believe that such cruel people, like the ones in this story, exist in the world. This is a French Mastiff named Athena. She looks like your ordinary house dog, but a few years ago, she really went through hell. In 2015, Pedro Dennis was walking his dog in northern Paris. During the walk, the man noticed another dog in the middle of a clearing. As he approached, his heart started racing. He simply could not believe his eyes. A French Mastiff had been buried up to his neck in gravel, and his leash was tied to a bag of building materials. Apparently, its former owner did everything they could to make sure the dog didn't escape. Pedro immediately called the rescue service and, without wasting a second, began digging the animal out. Athena was taken to the nearest veterinary clinic, where she was diagnosed with dehydration and shock. After a long rehabilitation, the dog found a new home. She was taken in by Jean Pierre and Raymond Dufos. Now Athena is showered with the love and attention that she never had. By the way, the last owner was found. He told police that the dog had simply run away, but no one believed him. Ultimately, he was taken into custody. And that's all, friends. Be kind to our smaller brothers and take care of yourself. Bye.